Good evening, Jeopardy fans, and we are live once again here on hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel presented by thejeopardyfan.com. Once again, and as always, I am Andy Saunders and I will be moderating tonight's discussion. Let's get right into introducing tonight's panel. Our first panelist, I'm going to introduce you in the order in which you appeared on the show. So let me just quickly go back to my chart to remember which one of you was actually at the rightmost podium. And it looks like my first introduction is Kate O'Connor, who is at podium number 3 on Monday. So congratulations on your wins and welcome to hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And introduced on the show a couple of seconds after Kate was, welcome to hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, Ben Cosman.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so as always here on hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, if you've got a question or a comment for the panel, you can certainly leave those. We've got a YouTube live chat you can leave your comments on. We've also got a hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel on Twitter. You can leave your comments there as well. And for the most part, we'll generally be talking about the December 18th through 22nd set of games. So that's in case you've got any questions on those ones. That's generally what we're going to be talking about tonight. So my first question, I think this is always a good one for me to open with, kind of almost the origin story question, as it were. It seems like every at least the vast majority of Jeopardy players are also longtime Jeopardy fans. So I'd like to ask both of you, what made you guys Jeopardy fans in the first place?
You want to go first, Ben?
Sure. I'll go first. I guess watching it with my parents. I don't really remember. There's no moment when I remember specifically becoming a fan. It was just always something I did. A lot of watching dinner and or eating dinner while watching Jeopardy.
Very nice. And what about you, Kate?
Same, pretty much the same. You know, I grew up in the New York market, so it's on Channel 7 just after the 6:30 news. Dinner, you know, this is Jeopardy coming on the TV. You run, you sit down and say, you know, who is it today? Can I beat all the questions? And I'm talking about, you know, 7, 8, 9 years old and competing against my dad to see who can get the most questions right.
I guess a quick follow-up. When did you first beat him?
It didn't take me all that long. My dad's pretty smart, but he's a work with your hands kind of guy. So like engineering, cabinetry, carpentry, anything with a car, he knows it. Backwards, forwards, he's amazing. You know, but even the categories that I would say are my weakest, like art, you know, Final Jeopardy from you know nothing about it, but he would also say, yeah, I didn't know that.
So let's you've brought it up, so I might as well just, you know, go right into that subject straight away. It sounds like, judging by your comments, Kate, and also Ben's actions, that you are both not particularly big fans of art.
No.
I wouldn't say I'm not a fan. I just don't know all that much. You know, my mother-in-law was a art history major. She probably would have got that particular question wrong, or any of the classical art pieces that everybody knows, like, you know, David or The Last Supper, or, you know, Mona Lisa, things like that. But art, I could not tell you the last time I'd like been thought about it really. It's just not my wheelhouse.
And obviously, now Ben, what was going through your head when you saw art being the?
Yeah, I think I doubled over the lectern when it came up because it was it was the one category that I knew I have no guess. I have no idea. I actually, when I was studying in the month before the tape day, I told I was studying with my girlfriend, and I told her, I'm not going to even bother studying art. It's a waste of time. I'm so clueless. It's like I'm going to study the things I know or have a general idea for.
Mhm.
I'm just going to seed art. That's just my giveaway. And then, of course, the dramatic irony will get you every time.
Well, it's so funny because I actually read more than a couple of theories that you knew the answer to the question, but that you bet 0, so you purposely wrote it wrong.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think by that point, I wasn't even thinking about the clue, honestly. Because I bet 0. Like I did the math when I was figuring out during final. When we were doing our wagers, I did the math to figure out how much I should have bet, and then I decided I'm probably not going to get it the one. And so I made the bet that we were all going to get it wrong. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, I regret it now, but I don't know. I don't know if I would have gotten it if I had, had to.
Mm-hmm.
Had you, been like, I have to get this right. My bet is 10,201. I have to get this right to win the game. I'm really going to think about this and see what see if I happen to come up with American Gothic and or Grant Wood. So
I may have made a guess. I mean, I'm pretty clueless in art, so I'm not going to say I would have gotten it. I probably would not have. But it was a moot point anyway.
Yeah, exactly, because you'd bet 0, and I mean, even from the sake of strategy, Mike Dupay in his book from 20 years ago even said, if you've bet 0, do not put down a correct response. Shout out your kids if you have to. Because it will look, the optics of having not made a bet and then providing the correct response are
I think I would have felt
yeah.
I would have felt worse if I had instantly gotten, if it like American Gothic instantly came to me. It would have felt worse, I think.
Oh yeah, I would totally agree with that. I really pulled it out of nowhere. And I honestly was betting to get in second place. Denise was a returning champion, but she was in third place. So, if I could just get a second, go home with $2,000, say it was a wonderful experience, and, be done that way.
Yeah, I think I mean, looking back, I don't think it was a smart, I don't think I was correct in thinking this, but at least at the time I was thinking, at least at 12,000, I at least have a shot at second place win, but we were also close. Clearly I would have had to, at least one other person would have had to get it wrong for me to come in second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so some more a couple of other questions about your about the Monday game. Certainly Jeopardy took a bit of a beating on social media for the Jumanji clue. Whether or not that is justified is another matter entirely. I certainly think the beating they're taking over it is unjustified, but that's my own opinion. Now, my question specifically, because this came up in one of the discussions I was having. Now, when that clue taped, did Alex actually give the plug at the time, or does he tape that later and they sliced it in?
That was taped at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically, the correct response was given, and then he gave the blurb, and then and then the next clue was selected.
Right. So there was no indication for whomever it was that answered that question. I think it was Denise, to move on to the next question. There was basically like a nonverbal cue that we were going to pause. Then he went right into the plug for the movie. But knows that happens sometimes. So as a contestant, it didn't really faze me in any way. Plus, at the time it taped, the new season had not begun to air. who's to say they weren't going to be doing that in a bunch of episodes? Just like there were other changes this season, like the contestants no longer go in front of the podium after the show ends. But the producers, told us that ahead of time. You will not be walking out to the front. He will be coming to you at the podiums and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had seen the Jumanji clues before, even last season and previous seasons. I didn't think anything of it at the time.
I think there are just people who, often there are more casual viewers who don't quite realize that it's happened so often in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that really was surprising was that, we were taping September 5th during last week, so that they even had a release date for the film and spots, planned around that at that time. That was really the surprising part. Not that there was a spot at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm guessing because they're probably, I believe the Jumanji movie was a Sony property as well.
Right.
That obviously Sony would have that information and they could pass that along and be like, okay, when's Jeopardy airing or when's Jeopardy taping? It's December 8th, episodes for December 18th through the 22nd. And then
I don't remember what category that clue was on.
That was in miscellany, which I thought really surprising, because usually miscellany is a category, like a potpourri or a leftovers, where they just ask a whole bunch of unused clues.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the recycle bin, as it were. And if a clue isn't, picked, that ends up in, potpourri or leftovers later on. So I also found that to be an interesting placement. I guess maybe they had 4 leftovers and they were like, okay, plug a movie in here. But
yeah. That's actually something I wanted to ask you, Kate. I don't know about you, but I forgot most of the categories from our game. When I was watching it on Monday, I was like, oh, I don't even remember doing that category.
Well, I remembered state flags. Can't forget that one.
I did not remember that.
That was the Daily Double. I remember more from the game that I lost, honestly.
I think that probably makes sense.
Than any of them I won, other than the finals.
Yeah,
other than the finals, those are
etched
in my brain.
Ingrained into your brain forever. The final Jeopardies, yeah.
Yeah, there are some clues from the game that are seared in my mind, but then entire categories. I entirely forgot we was an alliteration category.
Poland. I kept telling people, I'm standing up there, and it's the last category. I think it was the last category, all the way on the right-hand side of the board. Gdansk, Poland. Does anybody know about freaking Gdansk, Poland? And I got none of the questions right. I think there may have been 1 triple stumper.
2 of them.
2 of them. Okay, thank you. It was so random. Yeah.
Yeah, I
really
I had no idea. I mean, looking back, I don't think you necessarily need to know anything specific to the city in that category, but it was very strange. I remember standing there when they said, I said, well, I'm not going to choose that category.
Yeah. And the hard part about that category is that they were all video questions.
Right.
So you're reading and you're watching and you're trying to decipher it all in your head and formulate an answer and ring in before anybody else. So that one was really, really difficult for me. I mean, not even having zero knowledge of the subject area. That was the hardest sensory experience, I guess I would say, in terms of playing the game.
No, it seems to me like Johnny got caught out by that on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, with the clue about the Monongahela River, because obviously it's difficult. Even you've got you had the video with Ohio and Allegheny right there, but that again, that video is really difficult to see for you guys, and it's certainly quite possible that he didn't, actually pick up that he'd been handed the other two rivers.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a hard name to say. You might remember that it begins with an M, or that it, Pittsburgh and the Three Rivers and the bridges and all of that. When you said Johnny, I originally thought you were talking about Johnny Gilbert. I totally forgot about Johnny the contestant, Johnny. If I was competing in it, I probably wouldn't have gotten it, or I would have stumbled over it, despite the fact that I do know it. I have said it before. Friends in Pittsburgh, things like that.
Well, I know from from a perspective of being a baseball fan, I know that in the early years of my fandom, Three Rivers Stadium was certainly at the confluence of the three rivers, and certainly I have heard many a baseball announcer refer to the Three Rivers, Ohio, Allegheny, and Monongahela for many. It's one of those things that's very ingrained into my own head. And I'm wondering, Ben, would you have, I don't know if you watched Friday's game, but would you have, I'm guessing you probably would have been able to pick up on that?
No, I did not know that. I did watch Friday's game. I did not know the third river. I probably would have guessed Allegheny too.
Okay, that's interesting to know.
Three Rivers slightly predates my baseball. I don't know when it changed over to PNC Park, but it was really paying attention.
Okay.
Probably a couple years older than you, Ben. I remember that.
So, are you disappointed in yourself, or how disappointed, I guess, were you when you realized you knew your Philip K. Dick daily double there, Ben?
Not that disappointed. Because I was still really behind at that point, and I didn't even if I had made it a truly daily double, it was only a matter of, I think, a 1,500 or so that what I would have had extra. But honestly, my thinking at the time was I had just gotten out of the red. I was terrified of going back into the red. I did not want to bet too much to bring me, and if I had gotten it wrong, to bring me closer to the red. So I played it relatively safe. I was not anticipating going on the run that I did.
But it basically was just a matter of you picking up, the buzzer mojo in the last half of the round.
Yeah. Honestly, when I was watching it, I didn't realize that. I thought my comeback came sooner in Double Jeopardy. I did not realize I was so behind so late, where it was really only three and a half categories left, I think, when I moved into the lead, or even started moving into the lead. But yeah, the daily double, I got it, and I was just sort of. I was kind of relieved that I just got a daily double. I really wanted to get at least one. But at that point, I almost sort of resigned myself to third place. So my wager, I didn't think mattered all that much. And I don't think it would have mattered in the end either way.
No, it wouldn't. Obviously, the way it turned out for you in the end, it didn't make any difference. But
it was also a far easier clue than I anticipated. I thought the whole category, because you didn't necessarily need to know, you didn't need to have read any of Dick to know any of the categories. They were all questions about, besides the one about the college campus, which I think is the one clue I didn't get in that category. They're all based on, all of the books they asked about have been turned into TV shows or movies.
Movies, right, yeah. I didn't even know who Philip K. Dick was, but I think the answers are 4 out of the 5. So that just goes to show you, you can have, the context clues in the questions themselves can get you most of the way there.
Yeah, I thought it was a fairly easy category for something so specific.
Yeah. I remember trying really, really, really hard to ring in at The Man in the High Castle. And this is the one thing that I know.
Okay, so moving on a little bit now, with regards to your final Jeopardy betting, Kate, you certainly were quite cavalier compared to a lot of other contestants.
Well, for day one, I definitely was trying to get second place.
Mm-hmm.
Day two, I believe I led. No, I didn't. I wasn't leading going into final.
You were leading going into final, and you
Oh,
doubled
okay,
up.
okay. I don't think I realized that I was. Because typically at the end of Double Jeopardy, the leader's usually at least in double-digit thousands, and I wasn't. I think I was at 9,600.
Yep.
And then, so I'm like, well, I may as well bet it all. I've already won 20,000. If I happen to double and win, okay. I know enough about World War II that it was a possibility to get it right. Question came. It was so funny because my mom actually sat and watched it with me. I watched it live, and then I taped it and then watched it with her here with me. My husband was traveling for work, and she came to help me with my kids. And she was like, well, how did you know that? And I went through like the thought process, never having read the book or anything like that, and how I got there. And she was like, but how did you do that in the 30 seconds? And I basically said, I don't know. As far as, yeah. Then the the third day, luck, I told Alex that my in-laws had visited the Netherlands when they have like their big national festival, and I forget what it's called, Queen's Day, I think. I think it was a year before. Was it Beatrix?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Abdicated to Willem Alexander. There had been the rumor that she was going to do that. And I've been to Aruba, so I know that the airport is Juliana, and I know who Wilhelmina is. And it just kind of like, but there was nothing in the clue that ever said that the last three rulers were the queens.
Right, which made it a little bit more difficult, and especially if you happen to get down the wrong path, it could have been very difficult to come back from.
Which is why I think Remy said Spain.
Right.
Because one could easily get down Isabel the First and that whole, line. And
I think Justin said Portugal. Sorry.
And he said Portugal, exactly. And who, I don't even remember there being, I couldn't tell you last time royal family. Just something clicked, wrote it down, and that was that. Now, day 4 was another story. No clue. I know the actor. Like, I know who he is. I know the commercial. One of the funny things I saw on Twitter was somebody said Gordon's Fisherman.
Yep.
I guess.
Oh, I can see that. That makes sense
right?
to me.
You can see it. Would not have been a bad guess. I just thought Old Man in the Sea. I don't know where I got Mr. Clean. That was so random. I certainly did not guess Dos Equis. But in terms of betting strategy, it was just, I didn't feel like doing the math. I did the math the first day to get second place. Not that I would have changed the outcome at all, but what was the point in strategizing XXX01 or 99 if you lose, or why? Just bet everything. If I already won once and then twice, and then what does it matter? Other than having to go home, having to sit in the audience, not getting the free lunch, whatever.
I would have liked that free lunch. That's what I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice. That's where That's where at lunch I was sitting with Johnny and Zach. So Johnny was on Thursday and beat me, and Zach was on Friday and Donna beat him. And I said to him, I was commenting on how young he looked, and I could have said this to you or anybody. Did you make a wrong turn at the college tournament? And he's like, well, I'm 26. And I'm like, my statement stands. Like, hello. And I think that lit a fire under him. Like, he was going to beat me for that.
So, were there any surprised reactions to what actually, sorry, I'm going to ask that question a little bit later. One more follow-up to your lunch statement, because I'm going to ask it because obviously you got lunch on Sony's dime. So what did you end up having?
I think I had a cheeseburger. I don't eat a whole bunch of them. Okay. Although I did have In-N-Out the day that I arrived in LA, because I'd never been to California before. And I had a day to kill by myself. I traveled by myself. My husband stayed home with my 2 kids. I have a 1.5-year-old and a 3-year-old. Oof. So it's kind of difficult to go away without them. And so yeah, I went to In-N-Out when I got there, but I think that day I had a cheeseburger and probably a salad to balance things out. I remember they had Fresca. I love Fresca.
Okay. So on with the question I was going to ask before I realized I should probably ask you what you had for lunch. So obviously the internet kind of blew up on Tuesday a little bit with what Alex said to Lisa Beth. Mm-hmm. Were there any reactions on set when that happened, or did the reaction online seem unexpected to you guys?
Very unexpected. Of course, I wasn't really focusing on the questions or the stories that anybody else told. I was more focused on the question he was going to ask me. I was next. One thing I said on my Facebook page with my friends that were, asking me, because I made the comment that I never thought I'd see my picture on TMZ, and here I was in the background of this picture. It was pre of the Me Too movement, right?
Yep.
Because I was October, November, and beyond. She's a woman in a highly male-dominated field. So I'm sure she's heard worse, either her daily life, just living as a woman, and B, certainly in her profession. It probably didn't faze her, just like it didn't faze me, because somebody who's out there worse, with a more cutting or biting or harsh remark. Not to say that what he said was appropriate at all.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But she probably, I can't speak for her, of course, but listening to it after the and witnessing it, something you hear. I don't really know what else to say to that. Now, somebody said to me, well, why didn't they edit it out? And I said it would be completely unfair for her to not have had a blurb be turned into him saying a statement, a taped thing that was edited in after the fact about how he asked her an inappropriate question or made an inappropriate comment, because she deserves to tell her story. She had a very limited opportunity for that 15 minutes. so taking it out would have been unfair to her, to not have any sort of thing, because really the whole thing was overshadowed by because you're a woman. There really was no editing it out and coming back from that. Now I have my picture on TMZ forever, so that's cool.
I'm not sure if cool is the correct word to use here, but now, Ben, I know that you are, turning back a bit. You're friends with Gemma Kaneko, who was on Jeopardy a few years ago, and actually was on Jeopardy live panel after her appearance a few years ago. So, what tips and advice did Gemma have for you once you'd gotten the call?
Oh, well, she gave me a bunch of her flashcards, which was very helpful. She gave me a book that she said she studied with, that was also very helpful. And it was good. I asked her a lot of routine questions, just like the process in terms of, and it was helpful. So I wasn't freaking out about a lot of the details, because I could just ask her and then she would tell me, and it was sort of settled my nerves. But yeah, it was very helpful.
And that is good, and I think that's something that that's very underrated, especially if you happen to know someone who's been on the show that can answer your questions. That it certainly helps to hear those things, just so that one more thing isn't unexpected for you.
Yeah, I think it enhanced the experience. I was able to relax ever so slightly more, because a lot of the details and a lot of the just day-to-day basics of actually going there and taping, she answered all my questions.
Mm-hmm. Very nice for sure.
Yeah, so thank you, Gemma. Shout out to Gemma if she's going to listen to this.
Yeah, I had none of that. I don't know. I never met anyone who had been on before. And here might be the time to say that I didn't study a lick. Not a book, not a card, anything. I didn't know that was something people did until afterwards. I just watched the show.
None of it helped me. Nothing I studied came up, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way it's supposed to be, right? Is that the things you prepare for, the things you don't know are always going to show up.
Well, to be honest,
you prepare for are never going to show up.
I think a lot of the, an underrated part of studying is just that confidence. No, especially if you feel you need to, at least know in the back of your mind that even if it doesn't come up, at least I feel prepared for this. Whereas if you haven't studied and you're not, and you're used to having studied for something like this, that it's not, you're going to feel more nervous because you're going to feel unprepared for the experience.
Yeah, I didn't feel unprepared. It's not something I ever would have thought to do. On vacation like 2 weeks prior, and was on a beach vacation. Now I was there with my kids and my father-in-law, my husband, and all of that. So, but there was a little bit of downtime where I could have taken something or, read in the evenings after the kids were in bed, or what. It just never even occurred to me as a thing that people did. I wouldn't have known where to start other than like reading Wikipedia, which is something I do. Anyway, I get myself down a rabbit hole and I keep clicking the links and get myself from, like the 6 degrees of separation.
So, here's my next question is kind of specifically for you, Kate. I mean, you work in insurance, so I'm guessing you're probably at least generally familiar with I guess almost actuarial tables and or possibly prediction models. So, I feel as though you probably have some feelings about my own prediction model for Jeopardy and how it kept on being like, yeah, Kate has a 33% chance of winning this next game, and then you proceeding to go ahead.
Right.
And
I mean, that's the wonderful thing about it knowing how it all happens, right? And how it all ends. So Actually, before I answer this question, my husband wanted me to ask Ben, when you lose party.
I debated back and forth a lot on this. I did. A friend of mine works in a bar, so just a bunch of us went there, and I needed a drink, so it was a good place to have a get together.
Okay, so we scheduled the viewing party, and it was at a brewery local to where we live, and I had about 30 family and friends there. Now my phone was on like almost no battery, but the whole time I'm like scrolling through, like refreshing to see what the prediction was. And as soon as I saw it, and he started laughing because of course I told him, he knew how much I won and how many days and all the other stuff. And he knew like highlights, like all the Final Jeopardy questions and all this other stuff. And every single night, I'm like, maybe I'm gonna get sort of bone thrown at me. Like maybe she has some semblance of a chance of winning, like 4 or 5. Because if you notice, your model for Donna was like 7 games.
Well,
she won 1. I won 3. You have 0 faith. No, it's okay.
Well, to be quite honest with you, Donna had $34,000 going into Final Jeopardy.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely.
Yeah. The model, and to be quite honest, I know we say we were only going to talk about this last week's games, but again, even in the I actually ran the model on Donna's second day score going into Final Jeopardy, and it was still, had she won that game, had she won on Monday, it still would have been, put her at that 7 game mark just by how well she had done in the main game.
Yeah.
Those, players who play as well as she does usually win enough to make the Tournament of Champions. Like, this isn't, the prediction model doesn't, throw out random numbers. It's, it's been fed 13 years worth of data, and people who score $34,000 usually win a lot of games. People who admittedly score in, around $10,000, going into Final Jeopardy, generally win about a third of the time. So
right. Listen, I know it was statistically improbable.
Hey, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being statistically improbable.
Oh no, I every single time, especially, I think you literally could have knocked me over with a feather, and I'm not a small person. Okay. The second time, I was really confident about the answer, so I was really into it. I was shocked almost more the 4th episode because I was answering more questions. I mean, like going back to like the feed questions wrong. I was not really answering any questions wrong. Games 1 through 3. I think I had maybe 5 previous 3 games.
Well, you only had 1 on Thursday too.
I think I had 2.
Well, Final was the second one, but
Oh, okay. All right. It was so like that just doesn't happen from what I've seen, from following, going back in the Twitter feed about the, number of questions incorrect, is that the winners typically take over the game board. Not only are they answering more questions, they're answering correct questions, but they're also taking risks and getting questions wrong. I was not taking those risks in any of the games really until the end. And also, it just speaks to you can know the content. And I would say watching a typical game, I know 90% of the questions. But buzzing in is so difficult. I'm left-handed. I buzzed in, rang in with both my left hand and my right hand trying to get a feel. And just nothing was working.
Mm-hmm.
I see myself on the tape. I've watched at least twice, some 3 times, and see myself furiously, and someone else is ringing in before me.
Mm-hmm.
That is the hard part, is the actual ringing in.
Now, Ben, you certainly, if I'm not quite mistaken, your my chart for the for your Monday game tells me that you, especially early on, you were taking a lot of risks. You had, I think, a half a dozen clues where you didn't give the correct response. You rang in and were incorrect.
Yeah, I really dug myself in a hole. See, I think I had the opposite problems. I thought the buzzing was a lot easier than I was expecting. Everyone going in tells you the buzzing is the hardest part. But I found it shockingly easy, and I was ringing in and I was getting first on a lot of clues I was not expecting. So it was almost a second thought of what I was going to answer. And I think particularly for me, the buzzer, it sort of wanted I wanted to buzz in even though if I didn't know the answer. Like there were a couple of guesses, like Buttercups was a complete guess. The second wrestling clue, I swear Alex gave me a look like it was wrestling. He goaded me into it, but taking risks, I thought I'm on Jeopardy. I might as well buzz in. My biggest fear going in was that I was going to freeze up, get stage fright, and not really buzz in at all. I
definitely had that fear, and I think I actually happened until I got to double and saw the state flags. In middle school, I won my school's geography bee 3 years in a row, and actually got to the states. And like flags is just something I know. And somebody on Twitter said something like, "Well, she only got the Maryland and Delaware questions because she's from New Jersey and they're adjacent." It's like, learn your geography. There's no place that Maryland and New Jersey touch, dude or lady, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a funny story, and one that I've told in my local newspaper from the town where I grew up, is that question, which was the lead-in question to the Daily Double. What the question was, Maryland. It was the crossroads and this family, or like their two crests, or the state of Maryland. One of my best friends and his wife, when they got married at Lord Baltimore's house. I think this is a question that you answered incorrectly, right? It was Baltimore.
Yeah. Yep.
They got married at Lord Baltimore's house, but his name was Charles Calvert.
Ah.
And if it wasn't for going to their wedding reception, I never would have known that. And then the Delaware question is, yeah, because I live, away from Delaware.
Okay, so as a quick follow-up on the prediction model statement, there's a question on the hashtag from Matt Carberry, and he's asked, have I run numbers as to whether there was a material effect on either Kate or Donna's prediction from the model adjustment I made at the start of Austin Rogers' run, where I changed the model from using the Coriat score to your score before Final Jeopardy? And I have kind of done a I actually in terms of your prediction, Kate, I just ran the numbers for yours after 3 games, and if I remember correctly, the prediction model after your 3rd game put you somewhere around 31%, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound about right to you?
I think it was 31, 34, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just ran the model based on your Coriath scores after 3 games, and it would have put you at 27% to win your 4th game. So, from that perspective, the model actually helps you. You know, it was the change in the model actually helped you.
Mhm. I'd
And
be interested to see if you calculated it from game 1 on.
well, that should be reasonably easy enough to do. Let me just the model. If I give it
Yeah,
the
because
number,
I don't think it'll help me in any case.
no, I don't think it'll help you in any case either. Your first game it says you've got you'd be 32% to win your second game based based on the scores from your first. But I mean, also that means that I would say that that's generally you had a good run on a daily doubles. If now, I mean, you
Well,
obviously
I
you
only
did
got one
you
daily
only
double. I
well,
only came across one in
right.
all 4 games.
Right, you only did get
Huh?
the one, but I think that the fact that you were able to make $3,000 off of that really helped you in terms of upping your upping your chances in the new prediction model.
The win probability.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny because my husband is one of those people that heckles people who don't bet everything on a daily double.
Yep.
And I said I couldn't do it. I needed something in the pot to build from. My self-confidence would have gone completely down the drain if I had gotten a daily double wrong. If I'd started out with nothing in Double Jeopardy and had to build from there, especially quick Ben was. I mean, he was really, really quick, buzzed in a lot. Would not have had a chance, a prayer of getting that back up if I had gotten that wrong.
Now, in terms of Donna's numbers, I'm pretty sure you yourself mentioned it was about 80 7 games. The model, the new model puts her would have puts her at 85% to win on yesterday's game. Just off her Coriat score because of how much she made out on her daily doubles. The original model would have put her at like 48%, not even a 50-50 shot to win her second game, which is interesting considering what happened, but also, she performed, closer to an 85% player on day 2 than a 50% player.
Yeah.
So in terms of, obviously for her, the 14% chances of her not winning happened, and sometimes that happens. The statistically improbable things can often happen, as we have learned in the real world over the past 14 months. But but yeah, she certainly performed like I like the second model is the newer model is better to go with, at least going forward. So how different is it watching Jeopardy now as a former contestant compared to before you taped an episode?
I will say I used to get angry when I got Final Jeopardy incorrect. Now I get angry when I get it correct.
Okay, that's an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of why couldn't this have been my final category?
Yeah, I can see that. At least the couple that have come up since my appearance, I never would have gotten. I probably think a 30% chance I would have thought of Island Records if I had been in that Friday show instead of Johnny. I've seen Mondays or today's. I can't. I don't remember what the questions were off the top of my head for those 2 games. I can see there's the frustration of why couldn't that have been my question? Or my husband and I play on the Alexa And
Yep.
oh, I thought that was going to create a echo in my house. Okay. Of the the J6.
Yep.
And why couldn't any of those been the question instead of one that I maybe got wrong, on the actual game board, things like that. Yeah.
That's again, that's very interesting to hear, and I am certainly in Ben's case. You're not the first person to be like, why couldn't that have been my Final Jeopardy? I mean, there's people from 2 years ago when they see easy Final Jeopardy still get upset that because they had been leading and got a triple stumper Final Jeopardy and lost, and they're still like, why couldn't that have been my final? And
yeah, every time I see a triple stumper, especially, I get a little twinge of regret.
Yeah.
But it's it happens. It's fun. It adds a new layer to watching. I think that's it's fun.
Yeah, and you realize the pressure that the people that are up there are under, what they went through to get there. I mean, I auditioned twice to get on, which is not a lot. I mean, I actually my first audition was in Boston, October 2015. And there was another woman with a name very similar to mine who got on. She was in my cohort from the audition. Her first name was the same as mine, and her last initial was the same. So I was convinced that they called the wrong person. And I will never forget, it was like February 2016, and I'm sitting in my living room, and I was pregnant with my son, but my daughter was asleep in bed, and my husband was already upstairs. And I saw her come on the screen, and the curse that I let out led my husband to come running back downstairs and say, what? And I said, it's her, the one from the audition, it's her. And the audition was in Boston, and I got there the day before, and walked the Freedom Trail in the afternoon, and it was like about sunset by the time I got back to my hotel. And I met this woman who ended up on the show, and I could tell you guys later who it is, but to her the morning of the audition, she was like, well, we have like another day here in Boston, what should I do? I said, oh, you should definitely walk the Freedom Trail. One of the categories on her show was the Freedom Trail. She got none of them right. So, like watching it, you see what the other people go, you're seeing what the other people go through now. I met a guy at my New York audition who it was his 4th time trying out. Have not seen him on the show yet, so he probably was frustrated when he saw me on there. It's life-changing in a lot of ways. I went to the grocery store last Friday, and I had my first in real life. Were you the girl that was just on Jeopardy? Yes, I was. Yeah, and then they proceeded to tell me how they were watching me all week, and I didn't really like that boy who beat you. Well, I don't really, he's okay, I guess, but.
Now, I just want to say, Kate, from your perspective, considering who the other Katie was up against, I'm pretty sure you'd rather have your results than hers. Because the two people that this Katie was up against was somebody who won $53,000, and in their 4th game had $34,000 going into final and lost. and the player who ended up winning that game ended up being the alternate in the Tournament of Champions. So from that perspective, I think you probably made out a little bit better than she did.
The person I was talking about from the
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's very interesting. So I remember the winner of it being a big winner. But I didn't know alternate for the Tournament of Champions. Okay, yeah. That's really cool.
So yeah, from that perspective, you clearly made out better than other Katie.
Yes.
I will say I don't remember anyone. I don't remember anyone from either of my auditions. For whatever reason, I auditioned in Boston 2015, but in June 2015, and then again, this past July in New York.
Okay.
But I don't remember anyone from the auditions.
Well, in this case, it was the names were pretty close.
Right.
Name's the same. Last name, last initial is the same. So I was pretty convinced that they mixed up our files or something.
Well, it's interesting. After my second audition, there was a laundry list of people who went on the show with my last name that I was also convinced that there's something going on. They keep on they keep on pulling a stack of files around my name and keep on calling everyone else. But you know what? Sometimes that happens, and I'm not. If I don't get on, I'm certainly going to keep trying out. So,
Well, who was it? Roger, who had like 7 auditions or something like that.
Yeah, he had a bunch.
They tell that I guess they tell that story to everyone. I feel like I need to ask him flat out just to almost be like, confirm or deny the story sort of deal.
Yeah, a friend of mine in real life, she went to college with him, I think. Like her husband and he are pretty good friends. And I think her husband is appearing on the show, maybe like ish, based on when he tapes it. But I know that like she's like friendly with him in real life, and she says that that's totally true.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I won't bother asking him then.
I enjoyed auditioning. I thought the auditions were fun. Yeah.
I had a really easy time the first time with the paper test, like the actual 50 question test. Mm-hmm. But I made a horrible error when you were up in front of the screen and like ringing in. The question was something about Canadian territories, which would be funny if you've seen Today's Show. This is the only thing that I know, okay, about today. That like it was like Newfoundland and the answer was either Newfoundland or Labrador, and so it said, let's say it said Labrador in the clue, and the answer was Newfoundland. I actually said Labrador, even though I knew it was Newfoundland. Like just the wrong word came out of my mouth, and I was like that was the kiss of death. Speaking of the kiss of death, so the sweater, the yellow sweater that I wore on game 4 was the same cardigan that I wore to my Boston audition. So I'm convinced that it's bad luck. And I've told multiple people that I'm going to burn it away to Goodwill or something instead of actually destroying it. But it needs to get out of my closet.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I had a different sweater with me. This is the funny thing. They tell you bring total of 3 changes of clothes, and then they made him change his shirt because of how it showed up on the TV. Right?
Yep.
I was convinced that none of my clothes were going to pay. I had 6 with me that day.
Oh, wow.
1 wishful thinking plus an alternate. And because they tell you to bring 3. I was a Girl Scout. I wasn't going to be unprepared. But that yellow sweater, I had a navy blue alternate. I should have worn the navy one. It's forever tarnished.
Yeah, I blame the shirt change for losing.
Okay.
No, I believe they were calling me Shirt Boy at that point, I think.
Well, it was because like the pattern showed up weird on the cameras, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Which is
warn
why
you
in all
ahead
the
of
promo,
time that like certain things just don't look good, just don't look right on camera, and that was one of them.
yeah, in all the promo materials, I'm wearing
Yes,
the first
I
shirt.
noticed that.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
that's
then
totally true.
I had a different shirt on during the actual episode because they made me change. And I had just exited. I had just finished changing. I got out of the dressing room and they called my name to be on the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
I was a half second away from biting into a donut because I was like, oh, I'm not going to be on the first episode.
Well, I said the same thing that I'm so glad that I was on the first episode because I get nervous watching somebody else win. We didn't watch Denise win because that was from a previously taped day. So I don't even know if I knew how much she won until they said it on during the taping. Only won one game. I mean, she could have been in Austin with a bunch of wins, and you never, I had no way of knowing. And it's like the last thing before they send you out on the stage, two people that's going to be in that first episode. If I was sitting on, in the audience watching, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4 go by, it increases the chance of getting nervous, especially if you have a person who goes on a streak. Do I really want to face this person? How am I going to beat them? These are all the things that they know. These are all the categories that they've covered, and what questions am I going to face?
See, I kind of felt the opposite. I almost think I would have been, maybe more nervous, but I think I would have been more settled in had I been able to watch an episode. Because particularly in the beginning, and I think that's why I was buzzing in a lot in the very beginning. I was very jumpy to start our episode. I think I would have benefited from a little time to settle in. Plus, I would have just liked to have been around a little longer.
Yeah, I can see that. I was always one of those people who volunteered first to do like presentations of things and in school just to get it over with. So, different personalities, different whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear different perspectives on it all.
So was there anything you guys thought that I would bring up tonight but didn't, or any questions you have for each other?
I was surprised when you said you didn't really know art, because I remember being in the middle. I was between you and Denise, and I remember so first I had Darrow, and Alex, I think, it was the clue. He said something like, this is kind of a weird question or a weird clue. And I thought, oh, great, maybe it'll be really obscure and really interesting. But then it was the name of a painting, which isn't that weird. But then as soon as the clue was revealed, Denise immediately started writing. And that was just the moment when I was like, well, it's over. I'm surprised to hear that you didn't really know art.
Yeah, no. I'm not like a museum person. Like history museum, something like that. Yeah, like go to Philly, go to the Constitution Center, go to Independence Hall, whatever. But I'm not climbing the Rocky Steps and all that. Not really into it. Similarly, didn't know anything about Philip K. Dick. Didn't even know who that was. But the question, like I said before, the context clues were really the giveaways for those questions. Yeah. What did I think you were going to ask? I don't know. I don't know. I didn't really know what to expect in terms of like questions that you would ask. No.
Okay.
But the thing is that in terms of like what Ben said about getting settled, to me, like you're there so early, like 7 o'clock in the morning, and they taping what, like around 10:30.
Yeah, I think so.
To me, like it was like get on with it already. There was so much of the like dress rehearsal part, like the round we did, like the dress rehearsal is like a round robin basically. They have you up there and, you know, everybody's getting their mics and, you know, you do a couple of questions and they get somebody out and get a new person in and then do a couple more questions. And sometimes they flip all three people. And, you know, so that was pretty interesting. But basically by the end of that, I was like, okay, let's get the show on the road. But it's so fast. Like, to me, everyone was like, well, how long did that take? Like, they do 5 episodes in a day. Were you there like all night? I said, no, I was back in my hotel room by 4:15.
Yeah.
And I watched the 5th episode.
Mm-hmm.
So like in person, and Don and I actually shared a cab going back to the hotel. We were staying in the same place, and we shared a cab. And you know, just she was, you know, super excited and not really nervous. She was like cool as a cucumber the whole time. I'm really sad she didn't win. I mean, Natalie was a good competitor, don't get me wrong. I was really nervous about like facing her because she seemed really, really smart. She's a dentist. And she kept like making comments about how like dry dentists are and like boring and whatever. And I was like, she's gonna be like the come behind winner. Like she's gonna kick all of our butts. You know, because like self-deprecating people, and I am one. Self-deprecating people, I think, are like kind of like the like you don't know what to expect from them because you don't really know, like, are they being truthful about themselves and their accomplishments, or are they like really an idiot? So.
Actually, one more question I want to ask you guys. Were there any lengthy stoppages during taping during the week?
There was a somewhat lengthy one both times with Lisa Beth.
Mm-hmm.
First for the Stars and Stripes Forever, and then that was I think they did that after a commercial break. One of them was a Daily Double, one was a commercial break, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then both times I knew instantly he reversed.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Scrooge. I did not ring in. I could not ring in. I wasn't in time. I didn't think of the name of the movie. But as soon as she said Scrooge, something said to me, that's not right, and they're going to fix it. But that was the second time. And the only thing I really thought was, it's really unfortunate that seeing how it ended and how I won, that her sole opportunity was being corrected 2 times. It had nothing to do with Alex's comment, to go back to what we were talking about before, because that didn't even register.
Mm-hmm.
But that she was, you know, that money was taken away from her twice. You know, because she was, I think, in the lead at the one point, because of that question.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that was the only lengthy stoppage. They had me 1 point take off jewelry because it was like they wouldn't start taping because they couldn't find the source, and they thought it was a bracelet that I had on, but I had on like long sleeves covering it, and I had the buzzer in a different hand, so clinging or clanging or something that they couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So
yeah, I think our game was very smooth. I don't remember anything.
No, I don't remember. I don't think there were no corrections. One of the episodes, Johnny messed up, so that part was re-recorded, but they did that during like a commercial break thing. Like they didn't stop the game for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was, he had made the same mistake in a previous episode, but I didn't really notice it. But in all 4 episodes, they had the same throughout. So at some point they had gone back and fixed that one too. But yeah, no, there was, I mean, the Lisa Beth one was really the only, I think that was the only real corrections in any of the 4, maybe even all 5 games that week where there was any stoppage of note.
Okay. Well, on that note, I'd like to thank the both of you for joining me on Hashtag Jeopardy Live panel this evening.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And because our normal taping day of Monday is a holiday next week as well, we'll be back next Tuesday night, once again at 9:15 p.m. Eastern, with episode number 16 of season 4 of Hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. So for myself, for Ben, for Kate, I am Andy Saunders. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week on Hashtag Jeopardy Live panel. Have a great night.